Hey Adventures, today is another book review. This is for A Merchant in Oria by David Wiley, which is a fantasy novella and just really a lot of fun, but we'll get to that more in a second here. Before we get going on the review though, I would like to ask if you would like and subscribe if you haven't already. So, on to the review. When I got this book, so David Wiley is a booktuber. I'll have his channel linked in the description down below, but he's a booktuber and author, and I've gotten to know him over the past couple of years that I've been doing booktube, and he's super nice enough to send us his novella A Merchant in Oria, and so I've had it for a while now and I've just never taken the time. It's super short, it's like 45 pages long or something like that, so it's not a long story, and it was just one that I needed to sit down and read, but I never really took the time to do it. It doesn't take that long. I think it would take about an hour to read the entire thing, at least at my reading speed. So I never took the time to do it, but then this month I kind of dedicated the month of March to reading books by smaller authors or booktubers or people that had just sent me books or whatever it might be, those smaller authors that I want to support for whatever reason, whether they're self-pub or just small authors or they're people on booktube that I know. And so I made it a point to get to David's book, and I really enjoyed it. I'll get more into that in a second here, but I went into it not really knowing what I was getting myself into. I suspected it would be a fun, clean story, but I didn't know really anything more about it than that. All I knew was that it was written by David, so I wanted to read it. It isn't a hard read at all. It's that just because it's not difficult to read doesn't mean that it's not fun or not a good story or anything like that. I actually thought it was a great story with a super interesting world and a magic system that was in many ways something that we've seen before but also unique, and we didn't really get to explore a whole lot of the magic system, but I thought it was a fun magic system, kind of cool it was simple enough to understand with this one little story. Lots of other common fantasy tropes like dwarven cities, especially cities that are specifically designed for mining a certain ore that is very precious and very important to the society of the world for whatever reason. So there's that trope. There's also the lizard people, which I really like lizard people for some reason. That's one of my favorite fantasy races, is these lizard people. That's great. It was fun to see as well. And so even though these are fairly common tropes, they don't bother me in the slightest because I absolutely love the tropes. Being a short novella, I can't really say a whole lot about the story without really spoiling the story, but it does follow a young merchant named Firion as he goes to the city of Oria to sell his wares, and then at that point the story begins and we get a fun fantasy mystery that explores a little bit about what Oria is and why it's like it is and stuff like that, and just then seeing a little bit of the character of Firion and the way he thinks and the way he acts. And so it's just really a fun, lighthearted story, but with some interesting and deeper themes that are hinted at and that are brought out a little bit. Some storylines that could be explored further if David wanted to go explore those storylines further. Overall, I really enjoyed the story. I can't really say that it was like the greatest thing I've ever read. I mean, it's not Tolkien, but I did really enjoy it. It was a really solid, fun story that had me smiling the entire time. I mean, I went into it reading it and was like, this is just really fun. I wasn't expecting some absolute great epic fantasy series on the level of Lord of the Rings or Stormlight Archive or anything like that. I wasn't expecting that, and that's not what it was. That's not what I was supposed to be expecting from it. And so what I went into it with was just, I'm gonna see what this is, and I ended up having a ton of fun with it. I would definitely recommend reading it if you want a fun short story. I will add as well that David just released A Merchant in Oria and Other Tales, which is a combination of A Merchant in Oria, but also some of his other stories that he's written all in one book. And so he just recently released that. I don't have that. I only have A Merchant in Oria, the single short novella, but I probably will get that eventually and read those as well. But even though I haven't read them, I suspect they're probably all just as fun, just as great as this one was. I will also have that linked in the description down below. That is my review for A Merchant in Oria. There's not really a whole lot I can say about it. It was a solid short story. Other than that, it was a solid short story that I just had a ton of fun with. So thank you guys for watching an Erudite Adventure. We post videos every Monday and Thursday, and I have our social medias linked in the description down below. Thanks for watching. Stay warm.